It's the day after Thanksgiving, and Officer Charles Bernowski readies himself for work. The patrolman kisses his pregnant wife, Elizabeth. He says goodbye to his 5 young children and steps out of his house into a darkening gloom crowding the Jersey coastline. By 11:15, the weather has broken, and a dirty rain washes the streets of Rahway clean. Detective John DeStefano cruises his beat when a call comes in over the squad car radio.
Responded to a call that a man had entered the kitchen of this home on West Milton Avenue and had fallen face down on the kitchen floor.
The detective rushes to the home of Mr. and Mrs. Louis Rapino.
The husband was working in the garage, and he heard 4 or 5 shots. His wife, who was in the kitchen, called out to him, "There's somebody in the kitchen."
On the linoleum floor, in a pool of blood, DeStefano finds not just a man, but a fellow Rahway police officer cloaked in his rain gear.
Then we discovered that it was Bernowski, who was laying face down, bleeding profusely from his face and his neck.
Officer Charles Bernowski has been shot. Emergency workers rush him to the hospital, where the 29-year-old patrolman is pronounced dead on arrival. As detectives processed what is now a homicide scene, a second call comes across the radio. Reports of a break-in at the car dealership next door. Detective DeStefano worked the scene of the burglary and notifies owner Ron Miller. DeStefano begins to piece together a theory on the break-in and how it's related to the killing of an officer.
My theory is that Bernowski was checking Miller Cadillac Agency. In those days, that's what the patrolman did at a certain time of night. He apparently was going along St. George Avenue and he was rattling the doors.
DeStefano suspects that Bernowski encountered burglars attempting to rob the dealership. If the detective's theory is correct, any evidence recovered at the burglary scene might just lead him to a cop killer. Inside the car shop, DeStefano asks Ron Miller to point out any items that may have been touched by the offenders.
Of course, the key thing was the antifreeze can.
A lone can of Prestone antifreeze on the shelf when Miller locked up is now sitting out of place outside the parts department. An officer dusts the can and discovers several prints.
The can was dated, so we knew exactly when it was filled. And what we did is we sent a bunch of guys down to Union Carbide, who was the parent company of Prestone, and took prints off all of the people that were working the day that the can was filled to eliminate them.
Detectives also compared prints from every Miller employee and police officer who may have touched the can. They are able to account for every fingerprint except one.
Definitely was the person who was committed the crime. It had to be that. We were depending on that print to solve this crime.
Detectives have produced a theory and a fingerprint. Now, they need a suspect.
We interviewed Mr. and Mrs. Boswell, who lived directly across from the Rabinos, and they described 2 young white males running out between 2 houses.
2 young white males, seen from a distance under cover of night. It is all DeStefano can muster in the way of a description. Officers take this slim lead and begin the hunt for a suspect whose fingerprint might match that of a possible cop killer. After 3 years, and with nearly every officer on the Rahway police force trying to break the case, there is still no suspect, and new leads have become old stories. The investigation itself goes cold, and stays cold, for more than 40 years. Joe Jukubik has been a U.S. Postal Inspector for 19 years. On May 12, 1999, a letter lands on his desk, the likes of which he has never seen before. It is from a man named Robert Zirinsky.
I received a letter from Mr. Zirinsky indicating that he was a victim of an identity theft in which approximately $100,000 of his mutual funds were stolen from him.
The letter is postmarked from East Jersey State Prison, where Zirinsky is serving a 98-year sentence for murder. Jukubik begins his investigation by requesting the checks cashed in Zirinsky's name, as well as the location where they were cleared.
I went to the check cashier, determined that an account was open in the name of Robert Zirinsky, and to open up this account, a driver's license and Social Security card in the name of Robert Zirinsky was used.
The currency exchange also provides Jakubik with regiscope pictures, taken at the time each of Zirinsky's checks was cashed. The postal inspector has a face, but no name for his suspect. Then the cashier remembers a small but significant detail about the man passing himself off as Robert Zirinsky.
The most important information was he engaged in conversation with him and had recalled that the individual had had recent cataract surgery.
The postal inspector gathers his regiscope pictures and heads out to the local eye care centers. 2 days later, Jakubik locates an employee who remembers the man as a patient.
I was able to identify the individual as Peter Sapsa. That was the individual in the regiscopes.
On June 23, 1999, Jakubik arrests Sapsa on charges of identity theft. The inspector quickly learns that Peter Sapsa is married to Robert Zirinsky's sister, Judith. Jakubik believes Judith Sapsa might also have been involved in the scheme to defraud her brother, and he begins to build a case against her. Shortly after, the inspector gets a call from Judy's lawyer, who wants to talk about a deal. Judith begins her story at home with her parents when she was 15-year-old Judy Zirinsky, living in Rahway, New Jersey. One rainy night in November, her brother Robert Zirinsky and cousin Teddy Schiffer came bursting through the front door.
And my brother and my cousin were shot. They came into the kitchen, and my cousin couldn't walk by himself. My mother sat him down by the chair, and my mother dug out the bullets out of both of them.
As the bullet was being dug out of his hip, Robert Zirinsky told his family how it got there in the first place.
He said that they were robbing Miller Pontiac, and a cop came. And my mother said, "Why did you shoot the cop?" And he said, "Because he shot Teddy, and I got mad and I shot him."
According to Sapsa, their mother swore the family to secrecy.
The next morning when we got the paper, and the headline was, "Police officer was dead," and my father started throwing up.
Rahway Detective Bill White and Union County Cold Case Detective Frank Pfeiffer pick up the Bernowski investigation. If Judy Sapsa is telling the truth, Ted Schiffer will have a scar from the bullet wound in his chest. The detectives ask Schiffer to lift his shirt, and he complies.
And it was exactly where Judith told us in a statement. Exactly. I said, "This got to be our guy." You know, I mean, how could you make up something like this? Boom, she's right on the money. We got to get somebody down here to ID the prints.
Detective White calls in the Pennsylvania State Police Forensic Unit and Trooper Joseph Coco.
I compared that to Mr. Schiffer's inked impressions, and I identified the fingerprint as being the right pinky of Mr. Schiffer.
With no evidence implicating Zirinsky, cold case detectives hope that Ted Schiffer might agree to a deal, rather than face a murder charge by himself. Colano works out a deal with Schiffer. The suspect will plead guilty to first-degree murder, get a 15-year sentence, and testify against Zirinsky. Based on the statements of Teddy Schiffer and Judith Sapsa, prosecutors charge Robert Zirinsky with the murder of Charles Bernowski. On May 24, 2001, the jury begins its deliberations on the Zirinsky case. For 8 hours, they wrestle with a single question. Did the state prove its case for murder beyond a reasonable doubt?
Deep in my heart, I knew that this guy was guilty, and a lot of people felt that way. But with the evidence and the testimony that wasn't clear and cut, and the lack of evidence in this case, we had to find him not guilty.
I watched at least 6 of them walk out with tears in their eyes. saying they believed in their heart that he was guilty. Why they didn't vote that way, I don't know.
Robert Zirinsky was the shooter. He shot Officer Banowski on November 28, 1958, and Theodore Schiffer was with him. There's no doubt in my mind. And that's the way it'll lay with me.